Welcome to Beyond the Check, the first industry podcast related to Web3 fund investments brought to you by Block Sapiens, a leader in fund of funds and venture capital investments. We bring you exclusive interviews with industry experts in private equity, investment banking, business sales, and startup founders. It's our mission to provide clarity to the industry and lift the boundaries of tech investments. In this episode, our host Arrest Pokai-Levaish, Senior Business Developer at Cointelegraph, we will deep dive into the rise of Hong Kong as a new crypto hub in the APAC region. We welcome our guest, Keisy Lo, Head of Business Development and Venture Builder at Newman Capital, one of the leading Web3 VC funds in the APAC region.
Hey, Keisy, it's really good to see you in person.
Likewise.
Really happy to meet you. Yeah, I think, how do you like Singapore this year?
I think this year is a bit early than last year. Last year, I think it was towards later in September, but I think it's always good to be back in Singapore. It's only been 2 days since I've been here, but I'm already caught up with so many sort of connections and people that I've been just chatting online for the past year or so. And
okay.
We really appreciate you guys offering the chance for us to come up to speak. Obviously, me and you guys have gone way back. I think we've done some stuff together as well. So yeah, we really appreciate the opportunities. And how do you find about Singapore right now?
It's my first time. I landed yesterday. Well, it's far. The globe, it's quite big. So surprisingly, was 17-hour flight.
Yeah.
So
do you find it a bit different so far? The crowd here, compared to the crowd that you usually sort of network with from where you're from?
I haven't had a chance to meet a lot of people already, but from what I see, people are a little bit more polite, right? A little bit more relaxed. So this is what I like.
You're going to catch the F1 too?
For sure. Nice. I will try. I have a really good friend that is a fan, so I'm gonna make a picture for him or something.
Nice.
But that's it. It's kind of boring for me to spend hours following the race,
waiting for a car to come by every minute or so.
It's kind of like you really have to be a fan, I think.
Yeah.
I want to hear the story from the beginning, right, about Newman. But let's start with you.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of business development for the last 8 years, and I want to learn, how did your career start and what did you do to get it here?
Wow. So, I actually came from a totally different background. So I started my career, in real estate investment. So it was
Say it again?
Real estate investment.
Okay.
So it was totally different, but, I think it was, during, university days. That's when I first heard about sort of like crypto, Web3, blockchain, and all that.
How long ago?
That was 2014 and 15. And actually, it was one of the guy that I actually caught up with him now. He's also in the space. He's working with Tezos.
Okay.
So he's the guy who talked to me. He's like, hey, Keisy, you got to check this stuff out. So I was, spent some time on it. And then obviously left it all behind because, given that back then I was doing school, right? So I didn't really care about much. And then after I graduated, I moved back to Hong Kong. I thought I should spend more time with my family. So rather than spending it, the rest of the time somewhere else, I moved back to Hong Kong. I went to a real estate investment company. I worked there for about actually 6 years. So it was probably not the best. It was actually quite good, to be honest. It was 6 years of really good experience working for a company, taught a lot about investments. And eventually I also shift to sort of more on the private equity real estate side.
Okay.
So got to meet with a lot of, family offices, financial institutions, and all that. So that opened up a lot of horizons for me in terms of my career and all that. And I think after that, I moved to another real estate company, quite a big one, sort of top four, the big four of real estate, they call it. So I was there for a year. And then during the time there, my ex-colleague told me, he's like, hey, Keisy, I've been working with Newman. We've been looking for some talents to join us. I know that, we spoke about crypto, NFT, blockchain, and all that. Back in no company. Would that be something that you'll be keen to sort of dive into and explore? And I was like, hey, why not? I'm towards my late 30s, and I felt like if I want to make a switch, it's probably the best time to do it before it's too late.
Late 30s? No way.
Late 30s.
Right now?
Yeah. No, late 20s.
Okay.
Late 20s. Sorry, late 20s.
No problem.
I made that shift, and I joined Newman about a year and a half ago. Been doing a lot of BDs.
So how did you get it? How did you meet the guys?
That's always through ex-colleagues. So the girl I used to work with, the real estate investment company, went to Newman, and she worked with Adrian, the founder, for a couple of years. And I think back then they needed some more support on the BD side, on the overall operation side. So I guess he asked her, do you know anyone that is worth chatting to? So that's the best. That was it.
The best when you got introduced.
I do realize without a lot of crypto or blockchain background, it's quite hard to get into space, unless you're like fresh grad and all that.
Okay.
It was a really, really fortunate opportunities for me to get into the space. So I joined Newman about a year and a half ago, doing a lot of BD work. I started doing a lot of BD work with the portfolio company first. Doing a lot of, striking some partnerships, doing collaborations, finding opportunities to see where these projects could go to, connecting with different projects, investors, builders, developers, and all that. And I think towards, beginning of this year, beginning of the year, or later last year, when the narrative really shifted to Hong Kong, when we opened up regulations, that there were more and more opportunities that brought to Asia. And then we started to do more in the space besides just capital investing. We decided to do some advisory work as well. And that's where I got more exposure from my role as well. So moving more onto the advisory side. So now I'm also speaking to Web2 companies who wants to make that Web3 transformations, international Web3 companies who wants to move to Asia. So that's what I spend most of my time now. Obviously, for Newman, we're also doing Ethereum Hong Kong in October, 22nd, 24th. So I've been also busy, striking some partnerships, landing some speakers and all that.
I assume that there's a lot if you're doing an event. Well, from my experience, it takes more than one person for sure. So
so we are co-hosting with a few really good parties. So we're co-hosting with Scroll, and we have a really strong network of sort of supporting organization to be backing us for ETH Hong Kong. So
man, that's awesome. Well, do you find it like really helpful, the experience from before, once you joined the crypto, or you feel like it's a little bit different?
I think it's it is a bit different, but at the same time, there are certainly a few takeaways or stuff that I learned from my past role that really helped me here.
Is it mostly like communication,
I think it's
development?
really communication, business development, chatting to strangers, finding opportunities through conversations, really, having an agenda or having a narrative when you go into meeting someone, or at least have the ability to, find out what opportunities there are for our conversation. And then trying to obviously demonstrate some value from what we could offer. And then potentially, striking some sort of deals following.
That's not an easy. That's very challenging. I definitely understand that.
Yeah. So my background actually also did a lot of work towards sort of consumer facing. So I study in Switzerland in a hotel management school. So it's a university for hospitality and hotel management. So throughout my internships and the courses and all that, it obviously requires a lot of communications with strangers and client and guests and all that. I think I'm quite a people person. So for me, it was quite okay. And that translated to my previous role, and obviously new here in Newman doing BD, because I think for BD, you have to be very outgoing. You have to be the one that, who's out there.
Of course.
Conversations.
And you have to be approachable.
You have to be approachable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Well, I cannot even imagine what's happening like behind the doors of the like financial companies that you mentioned about. I'm from completely different background, like tech, and then into crypto. So like no idea like how it's all how does it all look. But from my experience, if it's corporate, you probably have a really kind of standardized KPI that you have to focus on,
SOP and all that.
right?
Yeah,
And you just, hey, you're doing your job good, really probably focusing on a few things, and that's how you master. But here you're probably doing a lot of things, which is exciting because obviously you have a unique team.
Yeah.
And I want to learn more, right? Can you tell me just more details about Newman, how it started, and what's the story behind it?
Yeah, for sure. So Newman was the fund was founded about 2 years ago, 2021. But our founder Adrian Lai, and some of our partners has been in this space since very, very early days. So actually, Adrian, the founder, told me he first got in touch with crypto in 2013.
Not bad.
So when Jihan from Newman Capital organized a Ethereum meetup back then in Hong Kong, actually Vitalik came. But he told me there was only 5 or 6 people who showed up. So, but obviously that really grabbed his attention because back then he was in the innovation sort of divisions in BlackRock.
Okay.
So for that, he has a lot of exposures and opportunities to touch base with stuff, the newest technologies and whatever is out there on the market. So obviously, I think cryptocurrency was something that really captured his attention back then. He then moved on to started his own startup called Liquify, which is an STO company in 2017-18, which when we look back now, I think, it was really, really early for STO. I think everyone's only doing STO now. But we were doing it, 6 years ago?
Sure.
And I think during the time in Liquified, he realized there's a lot of brilliant ideas, a lot of brilliant minds that are slowly flooding into the space in Web3. But as we all know, there is certainly a sort of thing we call a Web3 knowledge, right? So how we do things different in Web3 compared to Web2. So in 2021, he decided to start Newman as a investment fund, a venture capital fund, to really help accelerate the growth in the space by providing the right knowledge, the right support,
right,
and the capital to help these companies and founders to achieve where they wanted to be. So in essence, we started as a fund. We are a proprietary fund, so we don't have any LPs. We initially started investing a lot of fund of funds. So obviously to get more network and broaden out the connections in the space. So we are investors of guys like Newman Capital, IVC, NGC, BigCraft, MetaWeb, just to name a few.
Yeah. So once I saw that, I was really impressed. Why somebody might be interested in that? Probably because once you have the team, once you have probably access to deal flow, and have the vision towards where the market going from being in a space for some time, and I assume some track record in investing, because you probably don't start a VC from scratch, right? I assume Adrian and other partners had angel background, secondary market background, ICOs times, IDO times, things like this, right?
Certainly.
And obviously that make you confident, hey, I want to focus definitely on this part, right?
Exactly. So that's pretty much it. So with the sort of fund of funds investment, obviously that opens up a lot of network and connections for us. Obviously being LPs for these so big names in Web3 stage certainly help us a lot to have new conversations and have our own sort of direct connections within the space. So after that, we started to do a lot of direct investments.
Yeah.
But the way
so was it like, can I ask, was it really the first vision? Hey, we want to start somewhere. Let's start specifically with investing in a few VCs to start with. Was it really strategic decision? Or it was something like, hey, let's do it. It seems like they're great guys. We want to work with them. I think it's a bit of
both. It's a combination of both. I think it is good to, get more exposure from these big funds because, these funds will be able to connect you with, potential projects and other big investors in the space.
Right.
And at the same time, strategic wise, it's also good to, have more exposure with fund of fund investments. At the same time, for us, we know the guys from these capitals or these funds quite well. Guys like Ida, Alex. So it makes a lot of sense to also to do fund of fund investment, I suppose. But now we're doing a lot of direct investments. We've done around 7 to 8 deals in the past 6 months. So we've been relatively busy deploying. I guess the things that separate us different
sorry, say it again. How many?
6 to 8 deals in the past 6 months. I guess things that really separate us compared to some of the VCs is the way that we approach or the way we work with our portfolio companies. We actually have a bigger post-investment team than the investment team or research team. So we are really, really hands-on with our portfolio companies. Where I think a lot of VCs now, they do provide some sort of strategic advice or strategic value. But I think, back then when we first started, a lot of these VCs were just writing a check and hey, off you go.
No, 100% understood. So, definitely. I hear a lot of stories like, hey, you guys need some extra help. That's going to be advisory ticket or things like this, right? It really depends on how you're willing to do business.
Yeah.
And how you're able to help, because, let's be realistic, being a VC and willing to help the project is one thing, but actually being in the position where they need help, it's probably not the ones that you're willing to approach, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a mix of where they strong enough and able to do their own moves, and you just somehow figuring out an extra support that they might be missing. How does it work in your case?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every conversation that we have with founders or projects, we have to make sure that we are aligned on what we want to get done together. We want to identify, what sort of strategic value we can provide. And at the same time, what other investors in the cap table are providing in terms of value. And we want to make sure that what they want from the investors is something we could give. We want to make sure there's some sort of alignment here before we get into every single deal, I suppose. The stuff that we do, I think, is quite broad. So stuff like from recruitment, helping the projects find the right talents, sharpening the product, getting marketing, BD, go-to-market, to potentially fundraising. That's all the small touch points that we would help. We'll be happy to help our portfolio companies.
Because you guys do like advisory, right? I've spoken to Benji from Kairos. He didn't share much about Sprint Accelerator, but like you guys run it together, right? Just curious to hear, how does it work?
Yeah, so for
it's like, because I assume it's like a mix of everything, or for Newman Capital, it's specifically one approach for acceleration different, for advisory completely different, or it's kind of all together with a goal to invest directly into great projects. Like, what's the vision behind all those moves?
I think so. So the timeline basically goes from Newman Capital, us the fund. We invest for the first year or so, for the first 2 years, 1.5 years. So from 2021 until last year, we've been doing mostly direct investments. And then we started to do incubation. So we incubated 2 or 3 projects already. One of them has been quite successful, in my opinion. We some of the incubation, we actually the way, or to a certain extent how we do incubation, sometimes we even come up with our own idea, and then we found the right founder. Show them the idea. Here, let's do this. And then
kind of like a venture studio.
We put together a team. We help them with the product. We help them with the marketing. We help them with thinking about if there's tokenomics, we help them with tokens as well. And then all the way to go to market BD and fundraising. So one of the company that we've been working very closely with is called Tribe3, which is a NFT future DEX. So essentially allows people to long or short NFT for prices without having direct exposure or direct having that high entry barrier of, I don't know, 20 to 30 ETH for Nate, but they could, get in as low as 0.1 ETH, 0.01 ETH, and do 10x average long short. So that's something that we've incubated before. But, it's a lot of work. So we tend to incubate maybe 1 projects a year and stay really, really close to them.
Okay.
So that's the incubation side.
Is it like a teamwork? Whole group involved in the process, or there's like, hey, you, for example, Adrian, and a few other guys, it's really like know what's happening on that side? How does it work?
I think it's a joint effort.
Okay.
Everybody has their contribution. So, nice. Obviously, Adrian, our founder and managing partner, clearly he won't be, as hands-on, but, he's a guy that, will be outlining a lot of partnerships, connecting the right folks in the space, making those intros. For us, we'll be more hands-on with the day-to-day. So that's the incubation bit. And as I said earlier last year, when Hong Kong opened up its crypto regulations in October time, I think the narrative really shifted back to Asia. So we decided, we have a lot of conversations. We have a lot of people asking us, hey, what's going on in Hong Kong?
Of course.
Are we
especially since quite a tough times are on the US market.
Exactly. So I think timing was quite right, because last year, I think until now, crypto regulation is still not as clear in North America. At the same time, in Europe, there's a lot of political uncertainties, which is not really helping as well as high inflation rate around the globe. What we have here in Asia, I think it's so that leaves us Asia at the end, right? So that leaves us Asia. And in Asia, there's always this ever-changing competitiveness nature within all these certain countries. They all want to be the best. So obviously Singapore has been, on the spotlight for a couple of years now. And, places like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, these are some really, really high growth potential markets that we're eyeing. At the same time, Hong Kong at the same time opened its regulations. So it all became very bullish. The narrative really shift back to Asia all of a sudden. And when Hong Kong opened its regulations, people are trying to, guess, so what's the reason behind? Because some of us who knows the more, I guess, on the politics side is, Hong Kong runs by, it's a part of China. And at the same time, I think it is a clear instruction from China that, they want to use Beijing, they want to use Hong Kong as a sandbox of crypto and digital assets, for digital assets and blockchain enhancement. So just to go back a bit, I guess, on the timeline, I think, 2013 was the year that, Vitalik first came to Hong Kong. And, I think by 2014, 15, 16, a lot of crypto company has started in Hong Kong. So guys like, I don't know, Crypto.com, Amber, Spartan, the OFTX and Alameda, these guys were all founded in Hong Kong. I guess it was towards the 2019 when China declared that they would ban crypto. Obviously, Hong Kong government got that, has that in place. And at the same time, they start to, restrict retail investors to invest in crypto, where you have to be a professional investor. And at the same time, you require exchanges or operators to have license in the space. So that pushes out a lot of operators or companies from Hong Kong to places like Dubai and Singapore. At the same time, retail investors were not able to invest in crypto anymore. So only professional investors who would be allowed to do so. So in terms of professional investor, it means you have to have a minimum of, I think, $1 million net worth or in cash. And have obviously a track record in trading. So once you become a PI, then you'll be able to trade crypto in Hong Kong. That really changed the market dynamic, in my opinion, because everyone moved to Singapore. And Singapore were on the spotlight for the last couple of years. Until FTX happens, because obviously I think Singapore kicked out Binance, so which leave FTX as one of the few provider or exchanges people could use. So when FTX sort of went down, the retail really suffered here. But at the same time, the Hong Kong retail didn't really suffer because only the PIs were able to, were the ones that were trading, right? So when you look back now, some people were actually saying, hey, you know what? Actually, it wasn't so bad when the Hong Kong government, banned the crypto from retail investors. And now, after I think 1-2 years, the government is now telling us that, hey, we're going to do crypto again. Web3 is going to be, we're going to drive Web3. Hong Kong is going to be the sandbox for China, for Beijing, to test out crypto. Because of that, a lot of companies are asking us about Hong Kong, are asking about Asia. We felt like there's a huge opportunities for our business to take to the next level. So we decided to launch our advisory arm. So our advisory arm is essentially two things, right? Helping companies in Hong Kong to do their Web3 transformations from Web2 to Web3. We're coming up with a white paper to do that. So it's basically, analyzing the current landscape, what opportunities there are for companies to get to the Web3. At the same time, we're helping international Web3 projects to enter Hong Kong, to enter Asia and Southeast Asia, predominantly as a service. So that's the advisory side. For that, we're super bullish in Vietnam. I think that,
Nice.
That is a huge, that's the highest, I think, crypto adoption market right now. At the same time, also the sort of banking the unbanked sort of thesis, right? So, you look at numbers like number of cell phone users, and at the same time, number of people who doesn't have access to bank accounts. I think that's also a great metric to, evaluate what sort of potential there are. And at the same time, cost of acquisition is also really, really reasonable in Vietnam. So it's really ideal for a lot of projects to launch or to go to market, to acquire users in Southeast Asia. At the same time, leveraging back the capital resources we have in Asia, like places like Singapore and Hong Kong, where we have a really well-established financial fundamental and infrastructure for M&A and sort of the capital activities. So that's the advisory side that we're working on right now.
Cool that you mentioned specifically about things in APAC region. For me, Southeastern Asia, it's a little bit like a very diverse markets, because like strong Chinese market in terms of innovation in technology, it's very localized, right? It's not like it's Silicon Valley type of startups that we see in movies about them and things, right? But based on how I understand, most of retail innovation is happening here, being tested here for years, and then they migrate towards the West. That's what I saw, like super apps. I don't think it's something that happened in US or in Europe yet, right?
Yeah, where you have WeChat and Grab in Asia, which is literally, that's only app you need to spend your time on, right?
Yeah, and other things. And it's kind of like showing a lot of things. And I believe like Tencent, Alibaba are showing like how to be involved in a lot of things, right? How big company can be at the same time innovative and supportive and like invest in a lot of things. Versus, well, like Facebook don't do it actively, or Apple don't do it at all, right? And just focusing on being super successful as they are, right? But it's just different how they do it. So like I'm interested if you feel something similar happening in crypto, right? Do you feel like there are like big giants that are forming right now that are really active in the investing in the ecosystem, in other projects, in the growth overall, or they solely focusing on what they do and basically willing to, grow themselves only?
Yeah, well, I think certainly there are a few that, I could already, think of the moment you mentioned, but I think most of the big player here, what they want to do is to build a whole ecosystem, right? So they will have a projects that, in different segment of verticals, they would have involvement, they would have exposure in every sort of touch point within that segment of verticals, and slowly building that up. And when that sort of, established, that becomes very, very efficient, or I suppose very financial or commercials for them to move forward. So I think in Hong Kong, we do have quite a large group, an Animoca brands. I think they are, they're doing a lot of investments the last couple of years. And certainly there are paving the wave. I think in Hong Kong, I think they're sort of if people would mention about, I think, Hong Kong investors, I think, Animoca Brands definitely, will resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially, got stuff that they've done with Sandbox, with some other big projects. At the same time, I think in Europe as well, there are some big groups out there who's very heavy in market making, at the same time doing a lot of investments in different areas. I do feel like the market is really shifting towards, on the markets are a few different sort of type of investors, right? So there's your infrastructure investors, there's more of your consumer application investors, and then there's other segment investors. I think more when we first started, we started as more of an infrastructure investors. I don't think there is a clear mandate, because given different market cycles and different market settlements, there is going to be different areas you want to get into, right?
Okay.
So when we first started we first started more of an infrastructure investors.
But the trend is still active, right?
The trend is still active, but we felt like there are just so many infrastructure investors out there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very hard to become the top ones given the market competitions.
Of course.
But given the current market cycle and where we're at in terms of the market, we felt like consumer-facing stuff, consumer-facing applications, or consumer-facing infrastructure and stuff like that would actually make more sense for us to get our exposure right now.
Interesting.
Because we felt like that's where we're going to be bringing the next cycle. I know we all talk about what's going to bring in the next million users, but I think it's going to be anything that's consumer-facing. So right now we're very much focused into social, gaming, entertainment, or anything that builds and supports around it. Especially with our exposure in Asia, especially with the network and the assets that we have in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
We mentioned about, cost of acquisitions with users and all that. We felt like that's the space that we are going to be heading into for the time being. So, yeah. Not sure if that answers your questions, but the thing...
It is. I mean, it definitely, you brought it up a little bit. But yeah, like SocialFi, as I understood, well, it's a challenging one. In crypto, I believe for the last years, it's always been kind of like a little bit unsure. Like GameFi, gaming, it's kind of on the different thing. It's clearly positioned themselves as a strong player, right? But still, like it's very trend related. We still, I believe, see like gaming plus Web3 and GameFi, which can be completely different things, right? They're just can be something labeled as a Web3 game just for extra exposure. But realistically, I believe it's super early from how I see it.
Yeah, well, with gaming, right? I think, in the last couple of months, we've been traveling quite extensively to places like Japan and to Korea, where historically...
They have very strong game development studios.
They do. And, these gaming studios, they know what's going on. They know that Web3 it's up and coming. They know it's here. They know they need to get into Web3. So, funny enough, I always talk to people about this, but last year when we went to IVC, IVS, these gaming studios, I think they were still pretty much focused on domestic market in Japan or in Korea. The only thing that they would like to have international exposures were probably, LPs. So they want to have international investors, but they're still quite, focusing domestically. But this year, I think the narrative really shifted. I think a lot of these gaming studios, gaming companies are now eyeing the international markets. I think they do realize how strong their IP is internationally. And, it makes a lot of sense to bring their IP, on the international level on the Web3 side. Right. So we've been chatting with a couple of gaming studios in Japan and in Korea, who's done some really, really great titles. They are looking to expand the business into the rest of the world. They want to bring Web3 gaming. They wanted to do Web3 gaming. They actually have launched. The game is launching soon. The trailer has gone out last couple of weeks ago, and it's going to be their first sort of Web3 games they're going to make. And once the first one's gone well, they're going to bring in the old IPs into Web3 gaming. So that will happen sooner or later.
Okay.
And when that happens, I think, Web3 gaming will really take off. And at the same time, in North America or in Europe, you have, some of these really big influencers, gaming influencers, live streamers who's starting their own game, right? So that will also, attract a mass audience, I think.
Okay, interesting. Well, it's very different. I don't know why, right? It's kind of like I feel in the game industry, there are very big giants in terms of leaders of the market. Let's call it this way, and a lot of people trying to do something new. And I believe the competition is quite tough. But still, I'm surprised a lot of vision it's still in the gaming. I'm curious, how do you approach this? I know you have a great team, especially people talented and experienced in that area. I'm just curious to hear like why you feel this is something it's possible to actually do due diligence for, right? Is it easy to understand, hey, yes, they potentially can do what we're willing in seeing them potentially doing? I'm just curious, like it's very challenging to evaluate, right? Because it's much more than just a team and technology, right? It's cultural.
Well, there's a lot of things involved, right?
Yeah.
If there's token involved, you got to make sure that tokenomics is healthy.
Right.
You got to make sure that there's no dumping pressure. You got to make sure that everything is going to be incentivized for the players, for the communities, and for the ones who are in it for the financial rewards as well, right? So I think for Web3 gaming, what it opens up is not really opportunities for gamers to get to new games, to play new games, but it opens up for a lot of market participants to get in there for the financial rewards.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of other things that we need to look at when it comes to gaming. So in terms of gaming, I think the opportunity lies across more on the potentially, I guess it's also infrastructure, right? So stuff like game distribution platform, right?
Okay.
So perhaps rather than investing in one single title, you would invest into a gaming distribution platform, kind of like a Steam or, kind of like, Twitch or anything like that. So it's not really limited to only one title,
Right.
but it opens up opportunities for many titles with potentially many, many more users on a multiple level. But for gaming, I think, for a lot of gamers out there, they are aware of why Web3 gaming makes sense. They do aware that the issues with skins, whenever because I used to game a lot, right? And
Okay.
I get really frustrated. Every new game, I need to acquire new stuff, and my old stuff never stay.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense, I think, for gamers. At the same time, economic model wise, there's certain games out there that has discovered or explored that front already. So it's really just about, putting all the small pieces together and finalizing the final piece of the jigsaw in order to make a successful Web3 game works. I think in the next sort of 3 to 6 months, we'll see a lot of interesting games coming out, given I think the market now is slowly recovering, in my opinion. The bull market, when the bull market comes, I think later on next year, I think you will see a lot of new tractions. We're still seeing a lot of games coming out. We're still seeing a lot of interesting gameplays, interesting demos that's been shown to us. I think, so I think the gaming space is actually really, really interesting. And at the same time, we're seeing more and more sort of big time gaming studios, developers who's coming into the space. So I think by time, we're only going to see better and better projects to come out.
Okay. Well, what I really like about the gaming, that the market is broader in a way, that like if you're really willing to target new users, it's not just crypto audience, right? But it's potentially just players as well who are willing to explore. I don't know how it works in details, even though I worked with a few, I would say, big names in the space. It's still like marketing approach. It's quite complex, right? And maybe might be aware about the branding side of how it works for them. But on user acquisition side, it's probably a complex deal to satisfy and attract both, players that just are willing to, hey.
I think it comes down to a lot of social.
Yeah.
That's why we also felt like social is going to play a big part in the next cycle.
Okay.
I guess traditionally when we were a kid, the way that we find out about a new game has always been, seeing the trailer on
Yeah.
YouTube,
Yeah.
Seeing trailer from different media sources.
Yeah.
But now we have streamers, which
Of
has
course.
never been around when we were as a kid. We don't have esports team. We don't have gaming guilds.
Yeah.
We don't have all those new ways to get new games. But now we have all these assets. So we have streamers, we have esports teams, we have guilds. These are great tools or channels for games to, acquire new users. And you look at some of the top streamers out there, they're also launching their own game. So that changes the funnel, I think, dynamically compared to how gaming marketing works back then as well. You're seeing also a lot of shorts videos on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube. Whenever you scroll around, you start to see short 10, 15 minutes, seconds gameplay. I think those are great tools as well. So I think that dynamic has shifted in terms of getting users as well.
Okay. Well, it's still quite complex because I feel like the competition is severe in that area, right? To do something better than other and make sure people stick and play, right? And not just download an app and try it and forget about it. And don't hate it from the first 5 minutes. It's already a complex thing to do. So,
and I think one thing that a lot of games that they are really focus on the early users. But I think it's how sustainable is it? I think that's the key point, right? So we also look at that. It's the game sustainable?
Yeah.
Like how long is that economic?
Yeah.
How long is the economics going to run for?
100%.
We're seeing a lot of games that we got 100K, 200K, 300K users in the first month, but they never mentioned to us what's the numbers like for the next 3-4 months afterwards.
Yeah.
So and we're also seeing with AI, right? You're seeing a lot of cool gameplay or a lot of cool demos or trailers that we're seeing. But at the end of the day, we need to really look at the actual gameplay to deep dive on the product.
Okay. Awesome, man. I like it. It's definitely getting serious. I heard a few things about APAC region. Maybe I want to learn a bit more about how do you feel about bull market versus bear market, right? I believe 2021 it still was pretty hot, even towards the end. So I'm just curious, what difference do you feel on the operational level, you specifically, and as a company?
I think
overall?
Operational wise, I mean, we've definitely been the same. I mean, we've actually been doing much more.
Okay.
I mean, back in before around 2021, we've only been doing, I guess, just investing and incubation. But ever since in the so-called bear market, we have got our advisory arm. We've done many more events. We're also coming up with an accelerator. And so for us, we've actually been even more busy, which for us, I think is the best thing to do. I know a lot of people say that, during the bear market is the best time to build, but we certainly agree. So we've been building not only on the product side, not only building on the company side, but obviously on our networks as well.
Okay.
So I guess in the last couple of years, we've been very, very fortunate to be involved with some very high level closed door conversations, whether with the government or with the regulators in Hong Kong, as well as, going to meetings internationally to Korea, to Japan, to China, to the Middle East with our Hong Kong government officials to really chat about, Web3 technologies and what does that mean for Hong Kong and potentially, just a lot of sharings as well.
Okay.
So in the last 2 years, I think we've been relatively busy. And we've been also deploying, we've been still deploying.
Okay.
So for us, nothing much has changed, but I think rather oppositely, we've been doing much more. Just gearing up for the bull market, and when it comes, we're all hands on deck. We're ready to go.
Well, definitely sounds good. So, sounds interesting. You're getting into political things as well. It's interesting. Not a lot of VCs, are willing to go into that direction.
I think we're just we are just voicing out what we think. I think that there has to be a certain sort of communication between the government and to the actual industry leaders. So we need to make sure that we are reflecting.
So how how does local institutions, government, LPs looking at crypto right now in the industry overall?
I think for Hong Kong, I think actually in Hong Kong, there's a lot of crypto OGs given the reason I spoke earlier on, right? Because, that's where Amber, crypto.com, Spartan, FTX, Alameda, these were all here in Hong Kong first initially. So we actually built a lot of crypto wealth in Hong Kong, but these are all so people under the surface, right? They won't be out there, given regulation also change later on. So I think now that after the last October, when we opened our regulations on the investment side, we are seeing a lot of financial institutions, traditional financial institutions who wants to march into Web3 space, who wants to be involved, who wants to start investing. At the same time, a lot of family office are also looking to get into Web3. That's stuff they're doing in different ways. Potentially, they set up a new entity, for them to have a crypto VC, or they do it with their traditional sort of entity on the family office side. At the same time, we're also seeing traditional VCs who's been very active in the Web2 side, slowly marching into Web3 sides as well. So certainly there's a lot of appetite in Hong Kong for Web3 investments, in my opinion. But I do think that there is a certain buffer between quality deal flows that we're seeing on the market in Hong Kong. So we're also trying to do something to bridge that gap. We're trying to find a way. But
so what do you mean? Can you specify that there is not enough?
I think there is definitely deal flows flying around Hong Kong, but it's not the ones that you would see, as you were saying, get sent if you're in America, if you're in Silicon Valley or in Europe. So, but we are slowly building up that pipeline. We are seeing a lot of market participants start to get involved. Retail wise, we are seeing a lot of retail start to get back into crypto, especially where now our first official license exchange has opened. I think their opening ceremony was last week. So now I think we have around 12 tokens are available for retail investors to invest in. But I think there's still a lot of work to do on the grassroots level for education, helping the builders, growing the ecosystem. So that's where we're going to be very heavily involved as well. For Newman, we've been doing a lot of collaborations and partnership with some of the local universities. I'm not sure if you guys know, but according to CoinDesk's sort of report for the best blockchain academy in the world, there are 4 universities in the top 20 are actually based in Hong Kong. So we're working with these universities now. Obviously on the ETH Hong Kong side, we're going to try to do some workshop. We're going to do some hackathon together. But at the same time, on the Newman side, we've been partnering with one of the university to, be the guest lecturer. We go there, we do some career talks. We sponsor their sort of business case challenge, like the pitching competitions, and some of the winners, the winning team would be able to come to us and work as an intern for some time. So we've been actually ever since last October or beginning this year, we've been having interns from different universities, working with us for the last year. So this is a small initiative we're doing, but we are going to build up something bigger from the student side. Wow. So watch the space.
That's definitely cool, because a lot of VCs who I talk to might be very focused on the business that they're willing to do, right? Talk to projects, select the good one, pass on something they don't like and move forward, right? Or just be passive and go to vacation during the bear market, right? But you kind of very strategic and having a lot of initiatives. It's kind of interesting for me, and definitely something I respect, because it's probably not an easy thing to be involved in everything altogether and be good at it. But let's move the conversation towards the deal flow, right? I want to really hear about your current deal flow. How does it look like? And how great deals usually come to you.
Yes. So at the moment, as I mentioned, we've been looking very closely in anything that's consumer facing. So gaming, entertainment, social, or any infrastructure that could potentially support or build around it. So we get sense, I guess my assumption, but the amount that we usually get weekly, I guess we get sense 40 to 50 deals a week.
Okay.
Something around that level. And we would have an IC investment committee meeting on a weekly basis to drill down some of the deals that we really like. So we got guys from around the world who help us to do research, to get access to deal flows. So we got guys in Singapore, we got guys in India, we got guys in the US, and obviously us being headquartered in Hong Kong, that opens up a lot of funnel for potential deal flows. A lot of deal flows do come from closer connections. I guess that's how it usually goes in the space. But obviously, we are also working with the fund of fund investment. The funds that we invest in, they get access to good deal flows as well. Adrian himself has got a number of really good contacts for potential deal flows, and we also do a lot of events for deal flows as well, right? Okay. So whether attending the sort of VC matchmaking, which I'm going to go after this podcast.
Sure. I'm going to go with you.
Yeah, and also going to all these pitching competition demo days.
Yeah.
It's just pretty, I guess it's like that. So the way that we get deal flows. But as I said, right, whenever we come with a cool, interesting idea, we may incubate ourselves.
Wow, that's really great.
I think going back to the point that you mentioned before these questions, right, that, not a lot of VCs are being that involved or hands-on with the ecosystem. But I think for Newman, we felt like it's the right thing to do for the Hong Kong ecosystem and for the growth for Hong Kong in general. Most of the whole team is born and raised in Hong Kong.
Wow. Okay, cool.
We wanted to give back to community. I know it's very cliche for us to say that, but it is what it is. We wanted to give back. We want to provide the right support, because I think also on top of that, there is not a lot of there's no strong entrepreneurship mindset in Hong Kong, in my opinion. At least growing up in my generations or in the other generations. I think now it's getting better.
Yeah, that's what I hear as well, that Hong Kong can be seen really like it's not that you're gonna like bump into project or something from Hong Kong. Usually it definitely is something that's heavy on the capital side, on the investment side for sure. But like there is not a lot of innovations happening specifically here. Do you feel like you have a lot of local deals in the pipeline? Or it's usually a mix of everything?
Yeah, to answer that, I think we could just take a step back, right? I think one of the key reasons why the reasons that is because Hong Kong has been built. The reason Hong Kong is here today is because of two key industries, the real estate industry and the banking industry. So because of that, a lot of us growing up, the mindset from the parent is like, okay, you have to be a banker. Okay, you have to be a lawyer. Okay, you have to be this and that and that. Being entrepreneur was never an option for a lot of us growing up, at least in our generations, right? So, but I think the government do recognize that. So we have two large incubator in Hong Kong. One is called Cyberport. One is called the Science Park, which is really, helping startups to build the largest incubator in Hong Kong. So for Cyberport, I'm pretty close with a couple of the colleagues there in Cyberport, and they told me ever since Hong Kong opened the regulations, they have now onboarded over 150, around 200 Web3 company startups in Hong Kong. So that's really encouraging. And in terms of deal flows in Hong Kong, we are definitely seeing more and more, especially on the consumer side. I think there's a lot of cool, interesting projects that are coming out in Hong Kong that's tackling some of the issues that we have, whether it is, your daily your rewards on your spending, your daily spending, whether it is anything that is very related to your daily activities, right? Potentially like getting a coffee. Going for restaurants. There are some different startups that are coming up with product that, trying to tackle some pain points that we have.
Okay.
So there are a few interesting projects that are coming up from Hong Kong. We actually did a Web3 pitching competition earlier, I think in May or in April, with New World Group. So one of the largest sort of development company in Hong Kong and in Asia. They've got their Web3 arm as well, and we basically partner up. I think we have got around over 150 startups who applied. I think 5 to 10 of them came into the final rounds.
Nice.
So yeah, we definitely are seeing more and more projects coming from Hong Kong, and the quality are getting better and better. I think with more and more attractions and more activities that on the education sides that are happening, and as well on the builder side. I think projects are only going to get better in Hong Kong. I'm sure that sooner or later we'll be sending you projects from us.
Man, that's
you guys
awesome.
can check it out.
Yeah, definitely. But how do you feel like? Is it usually a mix of everything, or most of the deals are kind of from APAC region overall?
Yeah, I think for us, we have a fair mix of deal flows.
Okay.
I think most of our deals are coming from North America, Europe. I would say Asia, project from Asia probably make up a lesser percentage. But I think it's still a fair mix.
All right.
Just given, Web3, Silicon Valley, and that culture has always been there.
Yeah. Even though the times in US might seem tough for crypto, still great projects are securing the fund during whole 2023 from what I've been seeing, right? So yeah, well, that's not stopping them. I cannot say that for overall part of the globe, because overall it's definitely slowed down significantly, right? Probably, I don't know, 5 times, maybe more, comparing to how it was in 2021. But US projects are definitely looking very strong. So that's...
Yeah, well, at the same time, potentially there are some discounts to be made too, right? Just given, uncertainty
on the valuation
around.
side?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Good projects still quite expensive, right?
Yeah. I think for us, we're mostly targeting early stage and pre-seed projects.
Oh, wow.
So we're also quite open to whether it is token or equity. So with that flexibility, we tend to get some very good deals at some reasonable price for now.
So I assume in that case, you're like not really focusing. I mean, the question was like, how important is a liquidity event for Newman, right? And like vesting terms, etc. But I assume at this stage, you guys investing in great project, regardless of understanding the liquidity events, right?
Yeah, I think that has never been anything that could be our concern. Or,
oh, wow, cool.
At least for my knowledge.
Okay.
But no, we never really had that sort of issues. I think it's been a rather smooth journey sell for us.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Just curious, like, what's your vision? What's your energy inside? Like, is it like really everybody's very involved on that level and very ambitious and maybe even aggressive towards, hey, really getting some cool, unique deals that potentially going to be potentially can hit really great valuations in the future, because like realistically, if we're going to take a look at last bull market, there are not a lot of projects that are new in the, like, let's say top 200 market cap valuations, right? Most of the projects are quite already been established or launched during the previous times, during the previous bull market, right? So I'm just curious from your vision, like, once you're aiming for pre-seed, very early stage projects, like what's the vision toward behind it? Like, how do you usually make the decision? We want to work with them. It's a great projects. We want to support them. We know how to help them grow.
I think it really comes down to the founders
side. It's investment as well decision, right? You probably measure the risk and reward ratio. So I'm just curious to hear like a bit more about investment strategy.
Yeah.
If you can share.
Yeah, I think, what you said just now covers a lot of the points that we would, clearly take into carefully consideration. So, vesting period, vesting schedule, go-to-market strategy. If there's actually a product market fit to the market that they're marketing to.
But at pre-seed stage, is it really realistic to kind of assess a lot of things that early?
I think for us, for pre-seed projects or early stage projects, we're really looking at the team. We're looking at the founder.
Of course.
I think it's very hard.
Well, what kind of founders you would not refuse?
It's very hard to find good founders right now. I think that's a chat that, for us and all the guys that we're chatting, it's very hard to get good founders.
What are you looking for? Like, is there a profile of the founder
I think he
would
has
not
to
be
be
able to
has to be a
refuse?
doer. Like,
Okay.
has to get their hands dirty. They need what he needs to get done in order to achieve.
Okay.
At the same time, he has to be very commercially minded.
Okay.
I think there is a very hard balance between, commercial minded and a founder. So somebody
Okay.
who has a great entrepreneur may not be as commercial as they could be. Somebody who's really commercial may not be as entrepreneur as he could be. So finding that fair mix, I think
Okay.
is the key. Having, once we identify somebody who has both capabilities on being commercial and entrepreneur, I think, that's the one.
Well, it's definitely sounds interesting because in crypto, not a lot of people are willing to speak about that side, right? A lot of people are willing to speak about the innovation, invention, things like this, about really technology and what's behind it. But in terms of potential business, right, it's usually really behind the closed doors and you're not able to get exposures.
I think that those you will be able to get a sense of how commercial that person is from conversations from their
That's for sure. But I'm just saying overall from external perspective, most of the crypto and Web3 projects are willing to look a little bit like, hey, we're here working on this technology and basically we don't want to disclose anything related to business, etc., and like not really willing to push anything on the growth side that much, at least on the public side, right? They're willing to be seen very desired, let's call it this way, when realistically things might not go as smooth and not as great. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that's for every single industry, though, isn't it? I think it's for every industry out there. Everybody has a corporate or branding image that they have to sort of keep their reputation up to. I think a lot of conversations happen closed door, maybe quite sort of opposite as what they portray themselves to be. So I don't think it's just a Web3 or blockchain thing. But I think it's more of a wider industry or just for every single industry, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think in Web 2, I believe in the early era or even right now, it's like very cool to talk about, hey, this is not just a great technology, but it's a great business. For Web 3, it's a little bit different, I think, right? Hey, like if this is a company, they cannot talk about their tokens, they cannot talk about their business that much, right? They just can talk about their technology, about product, etc.
Do you believe that could be one of the way that it's very common in our industry, right? It's the expectation marketing.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a part of expectation marketing that they're not telling as much because they want to keep that expectation, they want to leave the expectation back to the audience? So they're just building up that hype and not disclose as much because they want to do that on purpose. Do you think that could be one way of expectation marketing?
I don't know. That's the great question.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Never thought about this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that could be one of the reasons too. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well,
we'll find out in the bull market.
I'm quite involved with a lot of big and small projects on the marketing side, but overall, it's pretty much always, it's always a little bit similar, right? Like on the branding side, they're really willing to be positioned very. Okay, let's say it this way. Some projects really have a vision towards, hey, we want to be famous for this, and they're able to build a brand behind it, right? And a lot of projects, especially older one, they're like, high cap project, but nobody really knows what they are, who they are, what they are doing. So that's as well an issue in the industry, I think, right? They can be really like a big organization. They can have like quite a lot of people. They can be recognized, let's say, heavily in Europe or in North America, but they completely going to be missed in Asia, for example, right? And nobody going to know what they are working on. So I see the challenge and just curious to hear like local marketing from your perspective. Is it really different? Do you really need, as a founder, to have maybe local presence, a local team to really understand what's going on and how to position yourself? Or you feel overall it's just the point of effort?
I think it's a fair mix of both. I think it depends on the nature of the projects that you're doing. I think if your projects require a lot of offline touch points, a lot of offline interactions, then certainly I think you will need some local help, or at least when you enter a new market, you may need some local help. Places like markets like Korea and Japan are the areas that, when I speak to projects who want to enter there, I would definitely recommend them to have someone on the ground. Because, you need to look at that potential language barrier. And, it's good to have somebody who have experience in working in those areas just to know not just the language barrier, but also the key cultural difference, right? I think we chatted about cultural difference just before this podcast, which let's not go into that. But yeah, so having local assets and local team, definitely would help.
Okay.
But obviously, it really depends on the nature of the projects. And
how about the local VC? Like, do you feel like you're specifically local VC, or you kind of feel we definitely global? We don't want to limit ourselves to being
I would like to consider ourselves global.
Okay.
But at the same time, we want to be recognized as a Hong Kong based VC.
Okay.
We want to be sort of recognized as the guys that are doing the work here.
Awesome.
Because I think most of the deals until today are still pretty much North America and European driven. We've done 1 or 2 deals in the Hong Kong market.
Okay.
One of them is a Bitcoin ordinal wallet. Obviously, given the market sentiments and where the market's heading in the future and opportunities that lies ahead with the ordinal space, so we decided to do that one. But we still have even though most of our investments are international investments, but a lot of our offline activities are still around Hong Kong. At least our current focus, I think, from outside of the capital investment side, is to help Hong Kong to build up the ecosystem, and to be, to put Hong Kong on that spotlight again. So, we're doing, as I said, we're doing the ETH Hong Kong. We're hosting an event with Mimland, a 2 days carnival during Hong Kong FinTech Week.
Wow.
In line with AFES. So a lot of initiatives are being done here on the ground.
Awesome.
You need to come to Hong Kong. We'd love to
definitely
invite you guys to come over to ETH Hong Kong. Definitely.
When it's scheduled?
It's October 22nd to 24th.
Okay. Well,
so next month.
Have some time. I'm going to be quite close. I'm going to stay in Asia for, I assume, till the new year. Okay. Let's see. So Thailand.
Yeah, well, come to Hong Kong. I'm sure you love it. You'll be quite different. And I definitely recommend you to, if you could go to China, experience a bit.
Yeah. Sure. That's great, man. Thanks for inviting. Tell me about, like, what would it take to get a check from Newman, right? Beside being a great project, it really requires a skill to get a capital, fundraising, pitching, talking, having a meeting, right? Presenting yourself. It's kind of important and not an easy thing to do. What do you feel about, like, what is the right way to do it with you?
Well, I think for us, we do have a really transparent process of vetting deals. So it's not like, just because I think there's no best way to get a check from us. I think our sort of procedure is pretty standard. And it's pretty fair. So whoever would like to show us the projects, or present the project to us, happy to grab a chat. I think our whole team are out there to do that, to facilitating, to do receive on deal flows. Once we've got the deal flows, we would share internally with our investment team.
Okay.
And the investment team obviously will deep dive the product, the projects. And if that's something that they felt like it's something of our appetite, we would then potentially schedule a second call.
Okay.
And then after that, we would then, if the calls and everything is as expected and is of our, if we enjoy the conversations, We then take it to IC, and then we'll discuss with the investment committee all together. If there's any potential questions, we jump on a third call, and then after that, we'll probably be able to, decide if this is a yes or no.
Right.
It sounds pretty lengthy, but usually it will take maybe a week or so.
Okay. Wow.
Because we are prop cap, so we don't have a huge sort of investment committee process or anything like that.
No, I mean that sounds well. Obviously it's quick because like due diligence can take a time, right? So I'm just curious to understand. Once you talk to people, once you look at the deck. And the white paper.
We reach out to our connections as well.
Okay.
Most of the time, the people on the cap table will probably connect or know them all already.
Okay.
So we'll probably ping them, hear the feedback. Or actually, sometimes, we do a bit more reverse. We will even chat to the investor that rejected them and see what are the reasons. What do you feel like it's not the reasons that you don't want to go ahead? Just understanding the other side.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So,
of course, totally get it. That's definitely something that make a lot of sense during this market to really understand.
Because sometimes the projects may turn them down just because they felt like it's not the right timing for the VC themselves.
Yeah,
but the projects could be great, right? So you can't really just expect them. People are turning down the deal because the project is not great. There could be other reasons potentially internally. So
no. Totally agree on that. Usually, like when probably I assume you have strong deal flow that usually has a strong lead in the round, right? But at the early stage or the pre-seed, it might be something that is actually not finalized. Are you able to take a step like and say, hey, we like the project, we want to do it, or are you still looking to who's considering, who's joining? It's usually something that's important for a lot of people to see who's on board, right? How it is for you?
Yeah, obviously, we want to make sure that everyone on the cap table actually makes sense first, i.e. the VC that we know, is it actually going to be beneficial for the projects that we're speaking to? Is there going to be a strategic value that will be given from these investors? We want to make sure that, the cap table people that we know are sort of in line as well. So we've shared cap table with a couple of big names out there. And, once you've seen each other names on the same cap a couple of times, I think that also create a lot of comfort and sort of confidence for us to get into the deal. But I think we have to be aligned. I think every investors within the same cap table have to be aligned in terms of how they want the projects to achieve, as well as what sort of support that we're willing to give. So I think most of the time, we will also ask the projects, right? So what are your other investors on the cap table now are providing you a strategic value? And what are you expecting the rest of the investors who are coming in to be able to provide you? I think that's something that a lot of project doesn't really carefully think about it before this year or the year before. I think during the bull market, you don't need strategic value. Everyone's too formal to miss out on a deal, right? So I think now, given the last 1 to 2 years, I think even founder itself now are looking at ways to maximize the fundraise process by trying to get some more strategic value from these investors, which I don't think has been done as much as before.
All right. Well, at the early stage, it's definitely something that it might be very helpful to actually get project to really push much quicker, faster, right? Because like I'm in touch and have quite some friends in Web2 industry, or and basically like once they at this certain number, like capital external cannot bring the value, right? They just basically can pay for the expertise much just themselves, and that's going to be same or better quality with the involvement where they actually can take that person or company accountable towards whether consultancy or however process they want to go through, right? But at the early stage, obviously VC can take quite a lot of effort on the expertise and time wise to kind of go through things that nobody will consider doing, right?
And be able to provide, I guess, more advice I think at the earlier the stages, I think the project itself is also more open up for other advice or new ways to operate. I think they're more open to feedbacks and comments to potentially make things better.
Okay. Well, that's definitely something I really like. Tell me about like innovation itself. I know that you're focusing maybe at this stage on something, as you said, more involved on the social side, but still there is innovation, right? I feel so. So I'm just curious if the topic is building the innovation versus building the traction. You know, what is more challenging, and what expertise do you prioritize?
I think is a fair mix again. You know, you need to have a bit of both in order to get the ball rolling. You have to have innovation first, then you get the traction, right? So I think innovation wise, we definitely look at, you know, what are some new ways that, you know, potentially could create more traction. So we have invested in so AI has been, you know, because everyone's chatting about AI. So we invested in an AI company that allows, you know, users to generate their own sort of preferred AI animate style. And with that, with the technology and innovation, it allows that animate character to become potentially a chat box. So you could be having video chat with them. They could be coming back to you. They will be having a daily conversation. You have conversations, and eventually you could use that anime to become your own VTuber. So, you know, that will become your avatar when you speak, when you go on live stream and all that. At the same time, I think the innovation here is quite cool. I read somebody who posts on the community on the Discord saying that, you know, it's actually quite a sad story, but essentially he lost I think one of his significant other due to accident or traffic accident or something like that. So after that, he basically upload all his text message with his significant partner onto that AI chat box. And you know, he was saying that he felt like she never left him.
Wow.
So this is very strong.
Of course.
And in terms of traction, you know, having that sort of technology, you know, be able to create your own VTuber or creating your own favorite anime, given your own prompts, and having that ability to speak to that person almost like a real person, whether it is on a text message style or video call style, or, you know, having that as a person speaking to you. I think that will open a lot of traction.
I can do that for my psychologist. Just gonna save me a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, you know, that tackles two spaces, right? So one is the anime users base, and the second is being the VTuber and the live streamer, as well as AI. So I think that in terms of tractions, I think the guys are doing quite well. On top of my head, I don't really remember the numbers, but I'm happy to share that info with you.
How do you feel about like Web3 side in it, or it's just a company and it has nothing to do with crypto?
Well, I think there is going to be crypto and Web3 involved for sure. Whether it is on the payment side or whether it is on the sort of underlying blockchain technologies, there's always going to be. I think a lot of companies now are looking for that blockchain adoption. So there will be some sort of blockchain involvement into a certain extent. Okay,
cool, man. Let's wrap it up. I definitely want to finalize and hear about the plans. Right. I'm just curious to hear, like, does investment strategy adapt according to the secondary market pricing, or, you know, and would you be able to define the investment strategy, let's say, for the next 6 to 12 months?
I think for the next 6 and 12 months, we're going to be very focused on the 3 mandates that we mentioned. So social, gaming, entertainment, or anything that's consumer facing. I think let's take a step back. I think we're going to be very focusing on anything that's consumer facing, because we do feel like the bull market should return later next year or so. So now is the best time to gear up for that. Get as much exposure as we can.
So yes, basically it's investment strategy is adapting according to the pricing, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Cool. But at the same time, It also investment. We're also a lot relying on the, as you said, right, innovations, the founder, the team, and all that. But I think for us as well, having potentially doing more pitching competition, doing more accelerator, doing more incubator. That's what we're going to be very focused on as well. We're working with some really cool parties, right? Really, really good projects right now, and we expect them to perform quite well in the long run.
Awesome.
So, in terms of investment strategy, I think consumer facing, but at the same time, we're going to be really, really busy building up more attractions and more exposure, whether it's on the advisory side, whether on the event side, whether it is on the accelerator side. I think for the next 6 to 12 months, you will see not only Newman Capital, but I think the whole Newman group, taking a big forward step in the space, not only in Hong Kong, but hopefully on the international stage. We're gonna be announcing something tonight, which is quite big. So after that, I'm happy to share that across to you guys.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it sounds something serious going to happen.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what. Well, I was hoping you're going to share with me today, but
I would love to. I chat with compliance. They're like, sir, no, cannot.
Wow.
Like, it has to be.
You're quite serious on that side. It's
maybe we could. We could record like a FaceTime, and then we put it back at the end of this clip.
Yeah. That's interesting, man. I definitely happy to hear this. What beside would we discussed about the trends that you guys focusing on consumer facing? What trends do you see, right? Or what do you like beside that?
Yeah, we're seeing certainly a lot of, especially in Asia, there's a lot of interesting consumer applications coming out there.
In crypto and Web3?
In crypto and Web3 specifically. I think more and more people are slowly looking at, super app. I think super app is something that's been discussed quite heavily in the last couple of months. So I think super app would be really interesting. And at the same time, for Hong Kong, given that we are opening our regulations for retail investors, we're really much, very interested in this space because we do have, 7-8 million people in populations, and majority in the crypto players, most of the market participants are quite wealthy. So that market we're also eyeing. So, as I mentioned, there are a number of pretty interesting projects from Hong Kong coming out that's tackling, the consumer day-to-day activities. So, definitely I think there's a couple cool ones to watch.
Okay. Well, that's definitely interesting. I'm gonna learn about this because, to be honest, I'm
happy to connect you guys when you're in Hong Kong. You can grab coffee and just learn about, because I think Hong Kong is very different. The culture, the way we do things.
Yeah.
We're always on the go. We're always on the run. We're always busy.
Okay.
So the issues that they're tackling may not be an issue that you will be for you guys coming from,
All right.
So it would be cool for you guys to meet up, and
for sure it would be very interesting to see that, because I'm definitely having a lot of influence from the people in the VC that are coming from the strong tech background, that had, I don't know, PhD in technology sector, right? That has a lot of expertise being architects on tier 1 project, etc. And they are going into VC having their own narrative. And me, I definitely heavily influenced by that side. And when I hear somebody talking about, consumer facing a project, it's probably, I saw so many of them that is probably so challenging to see something kind of quality at the level that you guys probably would invest in, right? That like 50 deals per week, overall, like, 200 per month, and through year is probably tons of deals that's coming in. So it's something that makes me understand that probably everybody's looking at things very differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And quality in terms of projects, it's still probably the same, but just still select something really quality on the consumer side, consumer facing application potentially, and recognize that just from if you're not expert there, if you're not really involved in that industry, it's just very challenging.
Yeah, I think, for us, when we look at this, sort of the consumer facing stuff, we also look at, as I mentioned, like who else on the cap table, right? I think a couple of years back, 1 or 2 years back, people would FOMO into a deal when you see the big names investors are on the round, and everybody's okay, I want to get allocation, allocations. But I think time has changed now. I think a lot of investors, a lot of VCs like us are looking at what sort of value these investors are giving, rather than how scalable these investors are. So that's also one way for us to potentially demonstrate and sort of identify, is there clear value into this product? What sort of potential way these potential investors will be able to bring out is value? I mean, some of our senior partners are quite heavy experience in the gaming space. So for that, we're quite well taken care of, and we do have some really experienced advisor that has that experience in sort of consumer, facing layering technologies and all that. So, we're quite confident on the stuff that we look at and that we want to go ahead. But I got to say, we do have a pretty high selection process where we don't usually, I think, maybe one out of, 20 to 30 deals that would potentially go ahead. So yeah.
Wow. Well, I totally understand that. That probably takes a lot of effort to really go thoroughly through all the details and really select something what matches for your vision. So that's awesome, man. I think if I've asked all the questions I've tried to ask, it was longer than I expected, but I think it was really good. So I'm super thankful for the conversation.
No, I really appreciate you guys inviting me out.
Beyond the Tech is brought to you by Block Sapiens, a leader in fund and venture capital investment. If you've enjoyed this show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Learn more at blocksapiens.io. While we take reasonable care to select recognized experts for our podcast, please know that each podcast represents the independent opinion of such experts only and not Block Sapiens. We make no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information provided. Any reliance on the podcast information is at your own risk. The podcast is for general information only and cannot be considered legal or professional advice.